All right, DJ, before we start, I never thought it would come to this, but I have to give you the floor. Yell at me, make fun of me, do whatever you need to do to clear your mind about the AAF.
I honestly don't even think you watched past week 1 or 2, so I don't think I have too much to say. I think you just kind of like jumped on this wagon and then felt like you had to ride with it because I was just giving it so much shit. But it was doomed from like week 3 when they couldn't fucking make payroll.
Well, I feel like you let me off easy, so thank you very much for that. And with that, well, let's get loaded, because this is the Loaded Box Podcast,
Where we never finish first because we finish last.
Thank you once again for tuning in to the Loaded Box Podcast. I am Ben Morgan. That is DJ Primo. And I don't know, what is this, like 4 or 5 straight weeks in a row we have a guest?
I have no fucking idea, honestly.
DJ's like half dead usually when we record anyways. The amount of beer this kid's been drinking lately has just been off the charts. You throw March Madness in there, though, anything is literally possible. But as I was saying, we're joined by John Chapman. He is an NFL draft analyst and contributor for Eat, Sleep, Fantasy Football and the 49ers Hub. I almost said 49ers, funny. And we are actually doing our second NFL draft prospect preview podcast, and this time we're talking edge rushers. But if you missed the last one we did, go back, check it out. We had a great time. We discussed this year's top cornerbacks with Zach Hicks of Stampede Blue and the Draft Wire. But before we get started, we're going to let John introduce himself. But even before that, we have to make fun of John's reading skills first and foremost. Because when we were confirming the date and the time for this podcast, we sent John the following. Sounds good. How does sometime around 7 or 7:30 p.m. sound? We're Central Time, FYI. And John responded with the following 3 words. Which time zone? So John, on your Loaded Box Podcast debut, I'm going to give you the floor. I'm going to let you explain yourself. Because honestly, right away, DJ wanted to revoke your invite. But I talked him out of it. So John, the floor is yours.
Well, you probably should have went with DJ, to be honest with you. I'm from Texas, which means we read slow, so I probably was processing all of the information you sent. Technology is new to us down there. And so, yeah, it just took me a while. But very glad to be here. And hopefully one of you will be able to offend me before we get through recording. That's usually one of the goals.
I love it. Well, before this, DJ was already hitting on this whole Texas thing, like why'd you move out to LA? What kind of move is that? And now we've hit on your reading skills already. So we're starting out good. This is your first time on the podcast. I hope you're excited. I mean, we're definitely excited always to have a new guest. Basically, our thing is we want to have a good time with the guest. We want them to say, you know what, that was the funnest I've ever had on a podcast. So we have hefty goals for ourselves. So I'm hoping we can live up to them.
I like it, man. And I'll tell you this, I listen to you guys and I really enjoy what you do. The last episode with the corners was awesome. And so anytime you can combine football, the draft, and alcohol, man, how can you not have a good time?
Dude, 3 of my favorite things every single year once the draft hits. I mean, you literally can't beat that. Oh gosh, well, before we get going, why don't you tell the people where they can find all your work?
Yeah, I'm all over the place, but the best place is definitely Twitter at JL_Chapman, CHAPMAN. I'm a huge 49ers guy. I host my weekly podcast, the 49ers Rush podcast, where we're doing very similar stuff to what you guys are doing now, just with the 49ers slant. But fantasy-wise, Eat, Sleep, Fantasy, and actually just 2 days ago got hired on with Dynasty League football as well. So
nice.
All over the place. You can find me at all those places, but Twitter's probably the best place. I love to argue. So if you like insulting my family on a mock draft, that's the place to do it.
As soon as we're done recording here, DJ's all he's going to do is scroll through your feed and find something to argue with you about. Am I right, DJ?
I mean, I'm a troll. That's what I do. I'll find you.
All right, DJ.
It's so funny. Whenever you publish a mock draft, like you just have to take like a deep breath, and it's just like, okay, this is going to be the second half of a John Wick film.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be awful.
Down.
And it doesn't matter what it is. And it's so fun. Like, it's just great how mad people get.
Dude, it happens every time. I mean, we do it because, like, we want to put it out there. It's a mock. It's what we believe. But there's always that person out there that just wants to crush you. So, yeah, you have to go into it with the mindset, like, this is going to go down. I'm going to get yelled at by somebody. It's usually how it always goes. With that, DJ, are you ready?
I'm always ready.
John, you ready?
Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. Well, instead of starting at number 5 or number 1, John, let's start with your number 3 edge rusher today.
Oh, I like it. My number 3 probably doesn't match up with the majority of kind of the consensus edge rankings. My number 3 is Cleveland Farrell out of Clemson. I absolutely love this guy. I think a lot of people, I don't know, a lot of people wait until the combine to jump into their super draft heavy whatever,
Right.
and they form their ranks with what happens there. Cleveland Farrell's not that guy.
Right.
Clemson 6'4", 264. He's a big old boy. He's just your definition of a football player. He's not your crazy athlete. He's not going to wow you with his highlights. But what he does better than most of these guys is he's just a consistent, positive graded football player. Absolutely love this kid, and he's somebody that's done it for a very, very long time. And he's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle. You see guys like Brian Burns and Montez Sweat jumping past him, but if you would have told anybody, before the combine that, Montez Sweat or Brian Burns is my number 2 or 3 edge guy, everybody would have said, maybe, but they're just wowed by the combine.
Right.
And so you kind of have to pump the brakes. I'm a film guy. As what I do, former coach, I want to see what happens, play in, play out. I don't want to see highlights ever. I don't believe in highlights. It's a bunch of bullshit. I want to see your bad takes. And whenever you can compound all of those, and you look at a guy like Cleveland Farrell, he's so clean. Whether it's versus the run or the pass, he's a guy that's going to produce play in and play out. And so that's kind of what I want from one of these top-tier elite guys.
Right.
So that's my number 3, Cleveland Farrell. I kind of have on my player comparison, he's a Justin Smith clone, which as a 49ers guy, just tickles me down low. Gets me a little excited.
I love the analogy, but we have to stop you right there because we cannot do NFL to NFL or football player analogies. If you're going to do it, you have to compare him to a basketball player. So you've made your bed here. Which basketball player is he?
Gosh, okay. No, I like this. He's going to be Baby Shaq.
There you go.
Glenn Davis coming out of LSU. Yeah, Little Baby. Yeah, is that what it was? Little Baby. What was his nickname?
Big Baby.
Big Baby.
Big Baby. There it is.
Yeah.
He's just a guy that you can't push him around. He plays nonstop in the opponent's backfield. Whether it's a run play or a pass play, he's going to grade out positive, and his effort instincts are just elite.
Right. The question that I had for you regarding Farrell was, which of the top 3 Clemson defensive linemen do you think benefited most from being part of that defensive front and might be exposed a little bit at the next level? Do you think it's Farrell or do you think it's Lawrence? Who do you got there?
No, I'd say Christian Wilkins? Who a lot of people are really, really high on, and I understand that. I went through 8 games of Christian Wilkins, and I did not find one time he was ever double-teamed.
Right. Isn't that crazy?
And so, now having said that, Wilkins has been a guy that he's done it for 4 years. So you could say whatever, but he's always been surrounded by top-tier talent. He's played with several different first-rounders that have gone on that defensive line. So, being an edge guy like Cleveland Farrell is, he's not going to face a lot of double teams. He did get chipped a lot, or they brought in a tight end or something like that. But being on the edge, you're going to be one-on-one.
Right.
Christian Wilkins, however, you never saw that case. They would double down on Dexter Lawrence almost much more, or just one-on-one throughout the entire defensive line.
Right. DJ, you got anything for Farrell?
Yeah. Are you a big dog guy?
I am. Oh, yeah.
I noticed at the win you say the word positive, but you're more like positive.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just picking up on that.
I'm from a lot of places, but definitely my accent doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Much like my family history, they are very convoluted and intertwined, if you will.
Are you? All right. Okay. Like Alabama style, or
I got a little Arkansas in my family blood, so that's going to be a lot of copy and pasting going on down there.
All right then.
I love it. My last thing for Farrell here was I have him mocked number 16 to the Carolina Panthers. Do you like that mock? Do you see him going higher, lower? Where do you kind of see him fitting into the draft?
No, I think that's a good spot. If you look at the Panthers, they love more than anybody else having somebody that is a very physical and a non-mover on the defensive front. I think him, Rashawn Gary, that's another spot that he for sure could go to.
Right.
But whoever misses out on those elite top-tier guys, and what I mean by that is, Josh Allen, Quinnen Williams, all those guys. If you just want a football player that's going to produce time in and time out, then I think this is what you're going to get. Somebody like Buffalo or even Cincinnati.
Right.
I think those are good spots. A lot of the mock drafts have Cleveland Farrell going in the 20s. I just don't see that happening because this film is just so great.
Right. Oh, I like that. So I know that you said you've listened a little bit in the past, and if you definitely listened to Zach's episode, you know that we can just never really just leave our guests alone when we bring them on. Can never just talk about what we bring you on to talk about. We always got to mix it up with a little something extra. And since we're recording this on a Thursday, Final Four for college basketball starts on Saturday. So we've got 4 rounds that we're going to play in between the prospects that we brought you on to actually talk about. It involves 4 options to choose from, and then from those 4 options, you'll have to end up choosing an actual champion.
All right, I like it.
But over last weekend, we were drinking, and somehow we stumbled onto the idea of baseball porn. No idea how this happened. Like I said, we were drinking, but since the words and the names that are associated with baseball are so perfect for baseball-themed porn, John, you're going to decide the ultimate baseball porn name, Final Four style. So, are you ready for the first 4 options? Remember, only one name can advance from each of these brackets.
Okay, and this is it. Now, the criteria that you guys set up, couple things, real quick question, because I want this to be scientific.
You have to do it,
one, is this one, am I choosing whichever one turns me on the most?
Ooh.
Or is this just, like, what are we going here?
Oh my gosh, I think I might, some of these I hope they don't turn you on, but if they do, I mean, the whole Arkansas thing, you got that going. But I'll leave it up to you. I'll let you have your discretion on every single round. How about that?
All right, let's do that. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right, here's your first 4 options. Number 1, and this one's great because it's not even a change in the person's name. Big Unit. Number 2, instead of Ozzie Newsome, we've got Ozzie Newcomb. Number 3, for any Cubs fans out there, Ernie Bank was called Mr. Cub. We've got Mr. Chubb. Or instead of Chuck Knobloch, we've got Chuck Cockblock.
Ooh.
Which of those 4 are you advancing?
Only one gets to move on?
Only one gets to move on. Big Unit, Ozzie Newcomb, Mr. Chubb, or Chuck Cockblock?
All right, so right off the bat, Chuck Cockblock's out. That's a negative. I want positive in my porn, not negatives. Get that guy the hell out of here. So he's out.
Crossed him off.
All right. Next up, I'm going negative. We're going to keep going. We're crossing them off. So next up, I have Ozzie Newcomb. I'm throwing that one out. Just because, I don't know. The word Aussie it's not doing it for me. It makes me think of like late 80s porn, probably Big Push. I'm staying away from that one as well. And I think we got to stay with integrity. Big Unit is going to be my win.
All right.
Because Frank Thomas, man, the Big Unit, that was his actual thing. And, teaching little kids watching baseball to think about penis names from an early age. So I'm going Big Unit for the win.
The funniest thing is this, and I think DJ probably picked it up too. The Big Unit was actually Randy Johnson.
What was the Big Hurt? Oh, dang. That should be in another bracket.
Oh, trust me. You may have just done a teaser for another one here. So you're
That's right, Randy Johnson.
You're going to stick with Big Unit. DJ, what would you have went with here?
Oh God, I like I can't break down the analysis. He's so good at it.
That was good.
I think I have to ride with him. Nothing was outstanding in that one, I have to say.
That was the weaker bracket.
It was the weaker bracket, so I do like the Big Unit, even though it is Randy Johnson and not Frank Thomas. But that's it.
I like Big Unit because you didn't even have to change the name. However, I like the scenarios and the unlimited number of scenarios that you can come up with Ozzie Newcomb and Chuck Cockblock. So I'm a little sad Chuck Cockblock had to go, but we'll advance the Big Unit. We'll return back to that game. But while we go back to what we brought you on for, we did number 3. Let's do your number 2 edge rusher.
Yeah, number 2 is not going to be a surprise for most people. That's going to be Josh Allen out of Kentucky. And he's my number 2 edge rusher and my number 2 big board.
Nice.
I love this guy. You talk about a guy that goes out and he just does everything well. There's not a lot that he doesn't do bad. I'll get to his negatives in a second, but pure speed and athleticism off the edge. He can cover well. He's great in the run game. And when you watch his film, he plays against a lot of mobile quarterbacks. I think day one in the NFL, he would be the number one spy linebacker against mobile quarterbacks in the entire NFL. Like, if you're playing against Lamar Jackson, and he's in your division, yeah, I understand the value is rushing off the edge. But if you want to stop him and it's 3rd and long, just set Josh Allen up right over the center and just let him be, because he can chase anybody down. I know his 40 time was a 4.6, 4.63, but his athleticism and his ankle to the ball in the open field is second to none. He is just incredible. Led the SEC in sacks, broke the all-time record there, and he just goes out and plays. Now, my biggest concern with Josh Allen is his pass rush. He only has one major move, and that's speed off the edge. So if you're not a 3-4 team and you're going to put his hand in the ground and do that wide 9 stuff, which hopefully whatever team drafts him is going to do, you're going to have to coach him up. Or otherwise, you're going to have to drop him into coverage, because he's going to be stalemated by these NFL offensive tackles that have insane length and athleticism. And if you want to look at the downside to his game, if you go back to when they played Florida, the Kentucky-Florida game, Jawan Taylor, he shut him down. And that game was great for Josh Allen, but every single highlight was against the left tackle, not the right tackle, where Jawan Taylor played. Right. So he's going to struggle with those kind of elite strength/length players. So I'm very curious to see if he can adapt his game outside of the speed rush and develop some counter moves.
Yeah. DJ and I were talking a little bit about Josh Allen right before you popped on. DJ, what did you notice those similar things when you were watching him?
I literally put a note down to ask you what's your biggest concern with Josh Allen, and you already answered it. And my note my note was, one thing I noticed on tape is he relies a lot on speed around the tackle, around the corner at speed, and didn't show almost anything from what I was watching to get inside for an inside move.
Yeah, and it seems like it was almost like it was coached, hey, this is the only thing we want you to do. Right. Because the thing is this, he only rushed the passer about 60% of the times. Like, they dropped him back in 3rd and long several different times every single game, because his coverage, like, this is a huge bonus. I don't think he'll be doing a lot of this in the NFL. This isn't why you draft somebody in the top 5 as an edge player to drop in coverage. But you want somebody that can run with a wheel route, a back coming out of the backfield. He can do that very, very well. So that's an added bonus, but I'm not sure that's really what you want to do. If he goes to a creative defensive coordinator that wants to drop and do a lot of zone blitzing and things like that, a lot of teams are going to have Josh Allen number 1 on their board because he's so special. And I think that he can do it, but again, you go back to this idea, what's the most valuable thing in a defense? That's getting to the passer. Do we want our star player dropping back? Right. I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. Last year's draft was a bit down for edge rushers, if you remember, especially compared to this year and then the last couple of years leading up to 2018. But where would you rank Josh Allen if he would have been in last year's class along with Bradley Chubb and Davenport? Would he have been between the two, or would you have had him ranked higher than Chubb?
No, I'd have him above Chubb, which sounds sexual in and of itself.
We'll get there.
But no, I definitely have a much higher grade on Josh Allen than I do Chubb. I was pretty low on Davenport. I really do think that giving up 2 first-round picks by the Saints to jump up was a mistake, but he had his injury concerns, whatever. Right. But no, Josh Allen is legit. I really, really do. And the thing that makes him so special is just his scheme versatility. 4-3, 3-4. He fits it all. He can do it all. And there is no bust potential with Josh Allen, because let's just say for some reason he is not going to be an elite pass rusher in the NFL. Worst case scenario, he's going to be an off-the-ball linebacker in a 3-4 or a 4-3. Like, he will play in the NFL for 10 years.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's super, super high floor and an even higher ceiling.
Right. Well, that's a good point. I currently have him mocked in my latest mock for everyone out there listening. You can find it at loadedboxpodcast.com. I've got my mock, DJ and I and the rest of the Loaded Box podcast crew. We teamed up with Beer Fueled Fantasy Football, and we did also a first-round mock, so check that out on our website. But what I was getting to was I have him mocked at number 3 to the Jets. do you envision any way that, let's say Murray goes 1 to the Cardinals? Do you think there's any chance the 49ers make a move at him at number 2, or do you think they're kind of locked in on Bosa?
The 49ers, they've had him out there for 2 days. Josh Allen's been out there for 2 days with the 49ers, front office and, during their meetings. And it's kind of funny, Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator, they were able to coach in the Senior Bowl, the Reese's Senior Bowl down there. And they threw some shade. At the end of the game, they asked, talk to us about some players you got to meet. And they're like, well, some players chose not to participate in this, and they really missed their opportunity and showed us who they are. And so you have the defensive coordinator throwing shade, at Josh Allen from the earliest point of this, this process. Yeah. But does that mean they're out on him? I don't think so.
Right.
I don't think Josh Allen's going to be the pick, and the main reason why is because they signed Dee Ford. Mm-hmm. Dee Ford and Josh Allen played the exact same role in this 4-3. That kind of uber athletic Sam linebacker into wide 9 and pass rush situations.
Right.
So if they do draft Josh Allen, that's great. 2 wide 9s in a 4-3, I don't think so.
Right.
So you're going to ask either Dee Ford or Josh Allen to change their game and try to be that new fight through the offensive tackle's outside shoulder, which we've never seen either one of them do well. Dee Ford did a little bit in Auburn when they did a 4-3, but he was always split out pretty wide.
Mm-hmm. DJ, you have anything else for that one?
You know what those wide 9 guys reminded me of? It just popped me in my head. Have you ever watched like a greyhound dog race?
Yes.
They're kind of like they got the long neck, they got their head down, sticking out right there. I feel like they're about to run a fucking greyhound dog. Get all those wide 9 guys running against each other.
It's rough because a lot of the NFL went away from it, but you've got to get to the passer. The 49ers did almost none of it last year, and it was obviously their defense was trash.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't get to the passer.
Right. John, are you ready for round 2 of our Final Four competition?
Oh, yes.
I love how I branded this as a Final Four competition. It has nothing to do with basketball. It's just the timing. We just had to relate to something. I think this bracket might be the strongest one.
All right, here we go.
So here we go. And you teased this one perfectly because you had mentioned the big hurt. Well, how about the big squirt?
Ooh, who is that?
That's your Frank Thomas.
Big squirt.
All right. So that's a tough one. Number 2 here, Raleigh Fingers. We've got Raleigh Magic Fingers. Could have went a lot of ways with that one, but that's a great name. The third one here, instead of Ernie Banks, we've got Ernie Cranks. And this is also one of my personal favorites, the last one. Instead of Rube Foster, we've got Lube Foster.
Ooh.
Tough bracket.
This is a tough one. I mean, you've got, Fingers, which is just, that's a porn name in and of itself.
And the mustache.
And the mustache.
Yeah, that one's strong. That one's going to make it through the first round of cuts here. I think the big squirt's going to be out for me because, I already did the big unit. I don't want to stay with that theme there. People are going to start to question my sexuality. Let's see here. Luke Foster is fun, but again, it's never been needed in my experiences, so I'm going to ex-nay on Luke Foster. I think the winner, man, Ernie Cranks is just it's perfect. Ernie Cranks is going to move on, and I'm an Ernie Cranks fan, I guess.
All right, I'm going to highlight Ernie Cranks. DJ, which route would you have went on that one?
The way he said Ernie Cranks was incredible, and it made it even funnier.
Right.
I probably would have went with the big squirt. I was thinking on the woman's side of it because they're the ones who usually squirt. But yeah, okay, you can get whatever you want in your head.
I'm not gonna lie, I was with DJ, but at the same time, I think you kind of, by taking the big unit in the last round, it sort of makes you not want to take the big squirt. So I feel like maybe I should have separated those two a little bit. But I agree with DJ. The way that you say Ernie Cranks almost just does take it to the next level. So far we've advanced the big unit and Ernie Cranks into the Final Four. With that, let's hop back to some edge rushers. And I hope one of these edge rushers listens to this podcast at some point and be like, dude, they're talking about me, and then they went straight to Ernie Cranks. What the hell's going on with my life?
That's great. I just hope there's nobody out there just like fast forwarding the podcast just to get to the like Final Four breakdowns. Maybe we're missing some untapped potential on the podcast market. That's all I'm saying.
That's a good point.
If we get that feedback next year, we bring you back. We do 64 teams instead of 16. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Porn, period.
There we go, man.
There we
just
go.
do porn. No football.
We're on YouTube. We'll get a lot of hits. All right, man. We've got your number 1, your number 4, and your number 5. Let's go to the bottom of the barrel. Even though he's going to be a good player, let's hear who your number 5 edge rusher is.
So my number 5, I have Montez Sweat. This kid's interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of people are completely fascinated, and there's even been people that have said, man, I have no problem if the 49ers take him number 2 overall, which sure as hell should not happen. Out of Mississippi State, 6'6", 260 pounds. He's very interesting. If you go back to transferred, out of the Big Ten, he was with Michigan State. He transferred down to the SEC, and he's so athletic. He runs a 4.41, weighing 260 pounds, and he's so athletic, and he's so clean. The problem I have with him is that it does not translate to consistency on the field. Yeah, I make this comment a lot on my own podcast, so I'm sorry, I'm going to reuse it here. Highlights are like a dating profile set up by the person that's trying to get a date. It's lies. If you watch film, that's like interviewing the person's ex. You're going to find out all the dirty, all the stuff they never do.
That's good.
And with Montez Sweat, he's got great bend off the edge, which is very rare and elite.
Right.
But he is so comfortable 10 to 15 times a game running 10 yards behind the quarterback and giving up on a play. He's not a guy that's going to be in there, play in, play out, and giving you exactly what you want. And because of that, as a former coach myself, I hate that crap. I can't stand somebody that can do it, but is fine getting beat every few plays. Like, he's not a guy that's going to go all out at the end of the day. One thing I will say is he only missed 5 tackles in the last 2 years, so whenever he gets close to the ball carrier, it's absolutely incredible. But again, he's much more of a highlight player than he is a consistent NFL football player.
I know that pre-free agency, DJ, as a Packers fan, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see all of his gear behind him. DJ was huge on Montez Sweat as a potential target for the Packers. DJ, have you sort of cooled on that, or what do you have on Montez Sweat?
It's funny that you say it. I have actually cooled down now that I've recently watched tapes, not just highlights, tape in general. We didn't mention the fact that this motherfucker has go-go gadget arms. He's like the longest fucking guy I've ever seen in my entire life. But there are times, like you said, he does look a little lazy. He, with his length, tends to stand up instead of explode like a track runner and stay down before standing up straight. And he looks stiff at times. There was times it looked like he was kind of getting stuck in mud. But then there was other times where I would be like, I can't recall the specific play, but he turned a quarter at like a 90-degree angle.
Right.
Like, where was that on like 4 other plays where you just stand straight up and look like you're just running straight and can't get around the edge? So I was kind of confused with what I was watching with him.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, like, his ceiling's insane.
Yeah.
Because his power in the run game, he was the number 1 rated Pro Football Focus player against the run of all defensive linemen. Like, he's very sound, and he can power clean a defensive lineman. We saw him do it at the Senior Bowl practice, where, like, he just put somebody on their ass. And he'll do that 2 or 3 times a game. But then, if you ever watch his highlights in the 3 plays after that, you don't see him do anything. It's like, what the hell is he doing? It's not like he's taking plays off. It's just, you can tell he's not the same person.
Mm-hmm. So I was looking into him a little bit here. He averaged nearly a sack per game at those 2 years at Mississippi State. He had 23.5 in 26 games. We all know that actual pace isn't going to keep up in the NFL. But what percentage chance would you give Sweat of leading all rookie edge defenders in sacks this upcoming year?
I'm going to put it pretty low. If I had to guess, and I'll just go right now off the top of my head, I'm going Bosa, Allen. I would put Burns ahead of him, and even Jalen Ferguson. I think Jalen Ferguson could fall into a spot because he's going to be drafted so much later, where he could step in right away and be one of those guys. If you want to talk about sack potential, you got to talk about the all-time NCAA leader in sacks.
Yeah.
Jalen Ferguson there.
We'll get to him. End of the day, do you think that Sweat's combine performance is going to boost him higher than what he actually should go?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I have no problem with him going to the first round. You talk about the Packers. I think that would have been a great spot, but shoot, you guys picked up two different, defensive pass rushers in free agency. I don't think that's going to stop them from targeting another one.
Right.
But the fact that at that number 12 spot, you don't have to now. Yeah, and so I could definitely see him going to the top 15. He should probably be in the 20s, but yeah, he's going to shoot up. Somebody's going to fall in love with him.
Yeah, I actually have him just because of like all the hype around him right now. I have him at number 5, and I personally think that that's too high. But I just think with the Buccaneers, with the amount of holes that they have, with the number of directions that they can go, and with all the hype that's been surrounding, I could see him legit going at number 5 there. Do you have you think that's too high?
I do personally think it's too high. If I had to pencil anybody in that number 5 pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it's going to be one of the Devin White or Devin Bush. I really think that they're going to target one of those guys. As this mock draft season keeps going, there is a chasm in the linebacker position, off the ball linebackers, between the two Devins, who I have Devin Bush number 1 on that list, and then Devin White slightly below him, but they're both elite. And so I really do think that's going to push them up, because if you don't get one of those two guys, you're not projecting a starter. Even if you're waiting until the 3rd or 4th round, you're not going to be drafting one of these guys with the confidence that they're going to be a 3-down linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
So I really do think that number 5 spot will be one of those linebackers. And so, and another thing too, like if you are Tampa Bay, you're picking at 39 again, you will be able to get a pass rusher there.
That's true.
And so in their front seven's not bad. They still got, 3-finger JPP. That would be a good porn name.
Yeah.
We do this for football next time. There's not a doubt in my mind.
But anyway, yeah, I think 5's too early. I really do, especially with Cleveland Farrell. If they took him there, I think I'd be fine with that. But Montez Sweat at 5 is just too rich for my blood.
Yeah. DJ, any more with Sweat, or are we on to round 3?
On to round 3, bitch.
All right, here we go. Round 3, baseball porn. All right, this might be the toughest bracket. I know I said that round 2.
Did you just say that?
This might be the toughest one. This might be the toughest. John, you ready? John, how do you feel that you are the chosen one? Like, you get to decide the ultimate baseball porn name.
It's a lot of power.
A lot of pressure.
I wasn't prepared for this, but just like most girls going into a porn scene, I feel like you just got to take the job head on.
Nice.
Oh, I love it. Well, let's go into the third bracket. The first one, instead of everyone, the captain, Derek Jeter, we've got Derek Queefer.
I thought you were going to say Derek Skeeter.
We can change it. What do you want to do? I like Derek Skeeter. I like Derek Skeeter. All right, number 1, Derek Skeeter.
Yeah, I like Skeeter better.
All right, I like this. This next one isn't a player, but rather a baseball position. Instead of the designated hitter, we've got the designated spitter. But a former Cubs baseball player, Mickey Morandini, we've got Hickey Morandini.
Sucky.
Literally, thank you. And then instead of Vladimir Guerrero, we've got Vladimir Guerrero.
Ooh, I like the 3rd grade kind of insult level there.
Yeah.
That's the weakest name, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, definitely is.
So let's recap.
Right.
We got Derek Skeeter, we've got the designated spitter, we've got Hickey Morandini, and then we've got the one that we've just eliminated.
All right. Yeah, so the Vlada Ho one I'm going to throw out. That's what you do with hoes. I can't believe I just said that.
I love it.
I can't wait till my wife listens to this podcast. Don't worry about it, baby. It was a boring podcast. Don't listen to it. I hate the Yankees with a passion, so Derek Skeeter, get the hell out of here. Even any association whatsoever. Screw that biz. So it comes down to Hickey, Morandini, and the designated spitter. My search history would say let's stay with the designated spitter for the win.
I love it. DJ, would you have gone a different direction there?
I would have gone with Derek Skeeter because I don't want my girl spitting, all right? You take that out all of it. I'm going Skeeter.
So the Cubs fan in me would have voted for Hickey Morandini. I think that's such a great name because I always loved the name Mickey Morandini, and to be able to throw a Hickey in there, It would be tough to turn down, but I like designated spitter.
They're all good choices.
So John, do you remember? Oh, this is really deep. But the Dolphins, at one point, had a general manager named Dennis Hickey. Do you remember Dennis Hickey?
I remember the name. That was like late '90s, wasn't it?
Well, he's been around for a while, but he was with the Dolphins within the last like 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
I hate that I have to set up this joke this way, but the best thing that ever happened with Dennis Hickey was a comment I read on Twitter, and is right after the Dolphins hired Dennis Hickey, and the comment was, "If you suck long enough, you get a Hickey." It was maybe one of the most creative things I've ever seen Dolphins related.
You can't say much because they've been so terrible for so long. But
The joke was
man, the
better
internet
than
is always undefeated
season.
whenever they come up with stuff like that.
Absolutely, no doubt in my mind.
Hey, hold on.
What's
How
up?
old are you, John?
How old?
Yeah.
I'm 36 years young.
And you're married?
Yeah.
Got
Still, we'll see after this recording.
We've got 3 over 30 married guys in one podcast. Nobody's going to listen to this.
Oh, man.
This is trouble.
No,
know your clientele, I guess.
We are the clientele. Like the people that are us are gonna listen. They're gonna love it. They're gonna have their headphones in, just looking at their wives, just laughing. Like designated spitter.
We just lost all the 25 years olds like just now.
It's happening.
Awesome.
It's happening. John, let's move to the top here. Let's go to your number 1 ranked edge rusher.
Yeah, so no surprise here. It's definitely Nick Bosa. I've been on the Nick Bosa train for far too long. Man, I got to quit throwing these porn analogies in there after these discussions. But that's okay. Let's stay with it. So Ohio State 6'4", 266. You know, he's the younger brother of Joey. But the thing that separates Nick Bosa away from everybody, he is the most consistent edge player I have ever graded. You can't find negative plays. There's no negative plays, and so you could talk about how his sack numbers aren't great. I think his sack numbers are all right. He had 9 sacks his junior year. He only played in a few games before he had the core injury. But you talk about a guy that affects every single play. There are games his junior year where teams won't even run the ball to his side of the field for an entire half string. Like, teams schemed against him. And whenever I was grading all the Ohio State players that have come out last year, the whole time, whether you're looking at a cornerback or a safety, it doesn't matter. You're sitting there saying, good Lord, you can't stop watching this kid. He's the best player on the field every game. He is just so disciplined whenever it comes to the running game. So even if you're just throw the edge stuff out of it, which is his best trait, he is unreal whenever it comes to run game stopping. His gap integrity and discipline with down the line on perimeter runs, he never loses contain. Nobody can block him because his hands are so strong. And did you see his damn quads at the combine?
It's not even
that
fair.
Doesn't even make sense.
No. They're like bigger than our waists. It's stupid.
He's the number 1 player by a mile for me, not just edge player, overall player. Like, I wish I could have a tier between the number 1 and number 2 player because Nick Bosa is just that good and that consistent. I really hope he falls to the number 2 spot for the 49ers, which seems like it's going to happen. Hopefully John Lynch doesn't overthink it, but Nick Bosa's for real, super safe, and I have no issues with this guy.
Is that where you'd have him mocked right now, then number 2?
Yeah, if the 49ers don't take him, which, I'm pretty excited heading out to the draft, flying out to Nashville for it. Nice. But if they don't take him, I'm going to be pretty pissed.
Yeah, we've seen players in the past sit out the bowl game, but we've rarely really seen one sit out like an entire season. Do you think a guy like Bosa doing that, do you think that starts the trend of a player that has an injury decides to skip their final season of college rather than maybe play through a little bit of pain? Or do you think Bosa was that good that he's an outlier and we probably won't really see that again?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we saw this trend start, about 10 years ago with the Combine, when the quarterbacks wouldn't throw at the Combine or wouldn't run at the Combine. When your status is solidified, why? Mm-hmm. What do I have to lose here? A lot. What do I have to gain? Absolutely nothing. And so I don't want to, the player in me wants to compete at every level. And so I understand that. However, the fact that NCAA players are not compensated fairly definitely raises a stake. You know, the Bosa family, they got plenty of money, so
Right.
you can throw that whatever. But for some kids that, you know, this is their only financial security for their lives and for their families, I don't blame them.
Hmm.
But I think that we're going to have some people that will sit out. You know, we saw it with the injury, you know, talking, you know, just basketball, when the shoe blew out with what's his name, Zion,
Yep.
everybody on Twitter was saying, dude, this kid should not play another
Yep.
play.
Shut it down. Right.
Shut it down. And he came back. You know, he still lost to Michigan State, which was awesome. But yeah, I don't know. It seems to be moving that way. The NCAA needs to figure out a way to get these kids some type of
Mhm.
compensation. They're
For
making
sure.
millions and billions off these kids, and that pisses me off big time. I understand the scholarship aspect, and I get all that, but man, it's you can pay coaches millions and millions of dollars, and they can still leave while these kids are stuck in their or their scholarships. So
Right.
I would not be upset if more kids do this personally.
No, I'm with you on that one. DJ, do you have anything for Bosa?
See, I thought where you were going is the biggest thing that stands out about Joey Bosa compared to the rest of these guys is he's white.
Oh, that is yeah.
I mean, that's the first thing I noticed when I looked down the list. I'm like, this white motherfucker. Of course he's all these black guys. God damn it! Are you uncomfortable yet?
No, definitely not uncomfortable.
Damn.
Absolutely not. I told you I was from Texas.
Well, exactly, and I figured that's why you chose Texas forever.
Now, hold on. Now, I will say this, and this is a legitimate thing that's taken place along a lot of Niners thing. Is Nick Bosa had a bunch of tweets back in high school that were very racially driven and very racially charged, and so there are some people in the Niners camp that are just like, man, fuck this guy. We don't want this racist piece of shit on our team. Now, that was several years ago, high school. Right. We all have our mistakes. Mine was named Becky. But zero chance she's listening. But yeah, that is a thing that you got to take into effect, you know, with today's NFL and politics and all that stuff. So,
DJ, I'm going to let you comment on that one.
Yeah. Don't really care. Does Texas recruit only is it only black people in Texas, just football players?
Man, the school. I'll say this without saying the school's name. I coached at one of the largest high schools in Texas. One of the most competitive. It was a great place, but it was about 50% African American, 40% Hispanic. However, we had quite a few white football players, even in that little mix of, you know, the kind of populace that was the student body. But yeah, 85% of the NFL is African Americans. That is a thing. That's
is Friday Night Lights I've always wanted to go to a football game in Texas because it seems so fucking cool. Is how it's portrayed on the show or the movies kind of similar?
Yeah, if you go outside in the suburbs or in the country, yeah, you're definitely going to see that. In the city, it's very, very different. I coached in the city in Dallas, right the city. So we had a 10,000 person stadium for our high school alone, and we had no problem filling that up.
Dang.
So you're definitely going to get that feel. I mean, we had over 500 football players for our team alone. You know, if you combine freshmen, JVs, and all that stuff. So you're going to see. I mean, it's what you do. You play football. Everybody does.
It's just crazy because it seems like it could be fake, but it also seems like it could be real because it's Texas and they're so passionate. So you see, Odessa's real, right, in Texas.
Yeah, Odessa is real, and unfortunately, that town has grown so much. They now have several different teams and schools, really? And so that culture, you know, Odessa Permium and their culture has definitely changed over the years. Unfortunately, for the worse.
I'm obsessed with the TV show Friday Night Lights, so
it's legit, man. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
Yeah. Fucking Tim Riggins, let's go.
DJ's watched the series Friday Night Lights, The Office, and Dexter. Those three shows probably a combined 712 times?
Oh, a lot of fucking times.
Huge. So I'll say this. Let's stay off topic. Sorry, guys. I was able to go to Miami and go on the Dexter tour and go to the actual apartment where they filmed it and all that stuff. But they had bulldozed it a couple years ago because a bunch of freaks kept showing up. People actually live there.
That's amazing. I literally just restarted Dexter for the 45th time just 3 days ago. So I'm all in again.
I love it.
So good.
I want to move on to the fourth round of our Final Four championship, but I do also want to talk about Pristine Auction real quick. How do you think Pristine Auction feels about being tied in with a March Madness MLB porn? segment.
Texas Road.
But before we start, I need to talk about what we're showing on YouTube. If you're watching, you see it. If you're not watching on YouTube, it's not doing much for you. But I'm holding a Alvin Kamara signed Chrome Saints mini helmet. We just announced the giveaway on Twitter earlier this week. Check that out. It's brought to you by our friends over at Pristine Auction. You can be found at pristineauction.com, but you can learn more about the giveaway by following us on Twitter at LoadedBox, or if you go to our website, it's loadedboxpodcast.com // I never know the difference between the two giveaways. So make sure you check that out. Check out their website. They got tons of great stuff for the man cave, but most importantly, try to win this bad boy. John, you're eligible. You should get signed up.
Done. I love mini helmets.
I love it. Well, let's go on to round 4. I really think this might be the most competitive bracket.
Oh, Jesus.
I haven't heard that before.
All right, here we go. I told DJ one of these names because it's one of my favorites already. So he already knows one of these. But instead of Cal Ripken, we've got Cal Ripskin. I got a little laugh.
I like that one.
Instead of Ted Williams, we've got Head Williams. Instead of Mickey Mantle, we've got Mickey Manhole. And this one's tough to say. Instead of Yogi Berra, we've got Yogi Berra Legal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a good one. So just to recap, we've got Cal Ripskin, Head Williams, Mickey Manhole, and Yogi Berra Legal.
I'm not even going to break this bracket down. This is a clear number 1 seed that just passes through with ease. Yogi barely legal for the damn win, and it's not close for me.
DJ, how do you feel?
I think I have to lock that in. I was a big fan of Manhole. That was kind of cool, but barely legal is actually a type of porn, and that thing has to move on.
Yeah.
Gosh, I might rename every fantasy football team I ever have to Yogi Barely Legal.
I might play fantasy baseball just to make it relevant.
Wow.
Factual.
The only I'm with you. I think I have to pass that one on as well. The only thing I really like is I love a baseball themed porn. Instead of CNI single, I love the idea of calling it Seaman I Single starring Cal Ripskin. I don't think you can beat that. That's so good.
You've missed your calling, my friend.
I think I truly have. Let's move on. Before we get to the championship round, I think we've got your number 4 guy left. So enlighten us, John.
Brian Burns. Yeah, Brian Burns and Montez Sweat are very, very similar. One, uber athletic. They were undersized guys. They both added a lot of weight whenever they came into the combine. But Brian Burns was playing around 230, 220 at times, and he added 20 to 30 pounds. He came in at 249, 6'5", and he ran a 4.53. If Montez Sweat didn't show up, Brian Burns would have been the guy that everybody would have been saying is top 5 too high.
Yep.
And he actually looked a lot better at the combine as far as position drills. The dude's just, it's weird. He looks like a basketball player out there competing on the field with the pads on and even on the on-field drills. Now, very long, 3-down player. He's perfect for a 4-3 system, which the majority of teams are running now. And the thing that bothers me, negative, he never pushes back against offensive linemen. Like, he's not the guy that's going to drive through and punish an offensive lineman. He tries to juke him. He tries to set him up almost like what you would with a basketball and a crossover move.
Yep.
Like, he tries to juke and club or juke and rip and get around them through finesse means. So he's not a guy that's going to, get in there and just, dominate. But it's worked very well. 24 sacks in 3 years. That's very, very impressive in the ACC. But I will say this, he does have a great motor and makes lots of plays down the field. So if you are one of those guys that's like, I want a guy that's never going to quit, that's Brian Burns. Like, he will chase down a screen or, a reverse on the opposite side. Like, he goes all out every play. He's just not very physical.
Cal Ripskin gets in there and dominates. That's all I wanted to add there.
I can't even do the podcast when we start talking about porn, and then any words that he says, I just want to break down into another porn thing. Okay, we're on porn and sex, and all I can think about is Brian needs to get that checked out because his name is Brian Burns.
Oh.
Brian Burns, there you go. And I never even said penetrations yet in this podcast.
How will we not? Wow.
My head is so far in the gutter right now. It's ridiculous. Yep. The best thing about us doing the porn bracket is if you accidentally go to loadedbox.com, you're going to end up right where you want to go. It's ridiculous.
The fact that they're not paying us for sponsorship by now is just pissing me off. We need to send another email.
Yeah, I got to tweet loadedbox. Whatever.
Just .com. John, so Florida State, as we all know, had a pretty terrible year last year, and they struggled the year before that as well. They've been in a little bit of a rut. So fans of the team that ends up selecting Brian Burns later this month probably hasn't really got to see a lot out of Florida State. What do you think is the first thing that they're going to notice about him, or what should make them excited about using a first rounder on him?
One, just how long he is. God dang it. Length is huge. So I mean, 6'5". He's got 33-inch arms. Like, it jumps off the film. He looks like he's playing with middle school kids out there, and his speed is unreal. It's just, man, he's got to find a way to be more of a football player and less of an athlete. His game translates well on the edge, but again, if he goes up against somebody like Tyron Smith for the Dallas Cowboys, he's not going to be able to do anything because Tyron Smith is so athletic and huge that he's going to be able to stop him whatever he tries to do. So he's going to have to adapt his game, but the effort is there, the ceiling is there. He's got to get tougher and stronger.
Right. I currently have him mocked at 14 to the Falcons. My hesitation there was just kind of the style of defense that they play. Do you like that fit at all? Do you see him going higher, lower than 14? Where do you think he slots kind of in this draft?
Yeah, I think that's not a bad spot. I think somebody like Seattle at pick 21 would be perfect for him, kind of in that Bruce Irvin role that they had. And so, I think something where he can come off the edge, a team that doesn't necessarily value that outside kind of power thing. Oakland at 24 is another good spot. I could see him going there as well. I would have said, Detroit at 8 is probably the highest that he could go. They have Trey Flowers, the strong kind of pass rusher there, and so you could pair that up with Brian Burns, put him on the other side. But usually, man, if you look at what New England has always done, is they love corners in the first round. They've drafted more corners in the first round than anybody else in the NFL. I think the top 2 teams combined. And so will Matt Patricia carry that over to Detroit, which they have a need there as well. So.
Right. No, absolutely. DJ, do you have any more on Brian Burns?
I didn't listen to a word you guys just said.
DJ's been doing his own thing right now. I'm not sure what he's doing, but he's doing something.
I'm working on something, but we'll keep going. Trust me, it'll come back.
So do you want to wait for the championship round? Do we hit a couple honorable mentions, DJ? What are you seeing in here? Okay, so your top 5 was Bosa, Josh Allen, Farrell, Burns, Montez Sweat. I know you had a couple of guys kind of knocking on the door, honorable mentions we'll call them. And I know you already talked a little bit about Jalen Ferguson. So what do you have for Ferguson?
Man, I cannot rank this kid high enough. Now, he's got some red flags. So, you have to understand that going in. He played at a small school, Louisiana Tech. But whenever you watch the film, whenever they played, LSU or Mississippi State, he's the best player on the field. He dominated both those SEC schools. Now, his stats might not have been great during those games. He did get a sack in both of them, but it wasn't like he was, unworldly. But he completely disrupted and was in the backfield the entire time. The quarterback was completely aware of him both times. So even when he played against SEC competition, he was able to just dominate. 45 career sacks. 45 sacks. That's insane.
That doesn't even
make sense. He's just a special pass rusher. Now, the problem was his pro day wasn't the best. So, one, he didn't get to go to the combine because he got in a fight his freshman year in college at McDonald's, and he beat a kid up. Police got called out. So the NFL decided to say, hey, we're going to take a stance against violence. Also, the same day they announced Ferguson couldn't compete at the Combine was the same day the Browns signed Kareem Hunt. Definitely not a double standard there. Fuck that. That doesn't even make sense, man. It doesn't even make sense. But anyway, his 3-cone time was absolutely abysmal at his pro day, so that's going to be another red flag there. But he is a guy that will, man, if he falls in the second round, I really do think that he's going to be a guy that's going to be in the NFL for a long time and a very consistent pass rusher. And he's one of those guys that is a little streaky, but in a good way. I wrote NBA Jam on my thing.
Nice.
Like that whole he's heating up. Like if he gets to the quarterback, like watch out because he's about to make 2 or 3 plays in a row.
Right.
So he could take over a game. I love this kid, Jalen Ferguson. I really, really like him.
With edge rushers, a lot of the time, when we've talked about it, you hear it all the time. We hear about the bend. We hear how fast are you around the edge. Everything that I've seen, a lot of things that I've heard with Ferguson is that he doesn't have the best bend. He's not super explosive. Have you seen prospects with these traits go and succeed at the next level? If so, maybe what are some examples of those guys, or what do they do to try to compensate a little bit for that deficiency?
Yeah, so the problem is you have to have leverage, and you have to be able to play behind your pads and be able to post and get into the body. And so this is a main concern for guys like Sweat and Burns is they're very long and they're big players, but man, they don't channel their leverage is bad at the point of contact with the tackle. Burns, you can see it sometimes, but not consistently. The thing with Ferguson is, yeah, his 3-cone sucks, but he plays so well where he will anchor his inside arm. Yep. He'll leverage it completely and get it up underneath the shoulder pad. He does this better than anybody else in this draft, where he will get the offensive tackle off balance and use that. So his bend, against air, whenever I was watching his pro day, I was like, well, of course this makes sense. Like, you never see him speed rushing off the edge. Like, he anchors through the offensive tackle and lifts them, and that's how he gets in. Right. You don't get 45 career sacks without having bend.
True.
Is he athletic? No, that's not his game. He is a better football player than he is an athlete. Exact antithesis to Brian Burns. Yeah. Just the opposite.
No, that's well said. And I think what we found out what DJ was doing. DJ, do you care to explain your latest tweet?
Nope, I just wait for the person that I tweeted it to respond in the middle of the podcast. What was I going to say now? I was about to jump on something. Okay, let's venture away from pass rushers here for a second because we've been talking about them. You were talking about the combine, and you don't put a lot into that, and then you talked about the 3-cone drill. I don't know how much you've paid attention to DK Metcalf, but does his 3-cone drill and I think it was shuttle. Like, were you at all as one of the top wide receivers going on this draft?
I would say it worried me no more than his film. If you watch the offense that Ole Miss runs, it's a middle school offense. It's absolutely trash. So DK Metcalf runs 3 routes. He runs a fade, he runs a comeback, and he runs a hitch. He doesn't break inside ever.
Right.
Like, you never see that. And it's not just DK Metcalf. What they did on the other side with the other outside wide receiver, they do the same thing. And once DK Metcalf went down with the neck injury, they moved A.J. Brown outside some. They did the same thing with him. So they want to stretch the field vertically, and that's about it. So This is a guy, can he break in? Yes, I do. Is his 3-cone trash? Yes, it is. But he's a guy that's going to have to adjust his game. And he has all the tools. The ceiling is there. He's rightfully going to be the first white receiver taken because his ceiling is just bananas. But there's going to be some concerns. Whenever he played against LSU and Greedy Williams shut him down.
Yep.
With that length, and it's pretty funny if you watch the game film. You'll see DK Metcalf power cleaning Greedy Williams after the play's over like 4 times. He's so pissed off because he can't get open. Yep. And he's just blanketing him. But so I don't know. There's going to be games where he's going to go out and have 6 catches for 120 yards and 3 touchdowns. But there's also going to be games where he has 2 catches for 10.
Yeah.
Because if he's against aggressive corner, he's not going to be able to get open. So he's going to have an offensive coordinator that can put him in spaces to get him open.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I don't know. It's kind of what I alluded to previously. I'm worried that he can't fucking turn. Like I'm legitimately worried that he cannot run other routes besides like straight at times.
Yeah.
So hopefully he can improve on that so he can.
Right.
I want to see him bust, but
And I'll say this, he's gonna have to be able to, if he can, against man coverage, he's gonna be okay. And so you almost have to call a certain type of offense. If he's against man, you got to go vertical because you can't stop him. And if it's against zone, that's when he's going to get those deep drag routes and things like that. So creating ways for him to find a place. And if you can get him to get a quarterback that can throw that back shoulder fade, then holy freaking cow. Like, it's going to be special because that's his best route.
I think John might be the biggest pimp on earth after that move he just pulled right there.
Yeah, that was nice.
I watched it on YouTube. He just shoved somebody in the background real fucking quick, and I love it.
Yeah, sorry, YouTube people. Yeah, my amazing family brought home groceries, and I shush them because I am the jerk that I am.
Yeah, dude.
They are amazing and smiling at me right now.
You are grounded. Is bigger bust potential, Metcalf or Montez Sweat?
I'm going to go Montez Sweat,
Wow.
man. I am. I think you can
Metcalf
find a
for
way
sure
for Metcalf no matter what.
Yeah.
If Sweat cannot get more consistent, I don't know. And I think that the edge position has a higher bust rate anyway.
True.
With somebody that is 6'3", 433, worst case scenario, you put him in the slot and you do what Cordarrelle Patterson did with the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
You just get the ball in his hand, and every now and then lob it deep to him. He's going to have a role.
Right. No, absolutely. I know there was one more honorable mention guy that you had talked about, and that was Rashawn Gary out of Michigan. I'm going to pop right into a question with Gary. I like his size. I like his athleticism. I currently have him mocked to the Dolphins at 13. I think his best move is when he gets that quick jump off the snap. He gets some leverage on that tackle's outside shoulder, and then he's able to shoot back in and kind of meet the quarterback at the pocket. Wanted to see, one, if you agree with that, and if so, does that sort of limit him as the player that he can be, like his effectiveness? He's not really that traditional top-end defensive end that we're probably going to see double-digit sacks from. He only had 9.5 in 34 career games. I think it's going to limit his potential. Does that limit where a team can really draft him?
Yeah, I think it's an issue. I really do. I am not a Rashawn Gary fan at all. I do, and so like whenever you said limit his effectiveness, I don't think he has much effectiveness. And we saw this with the defense with Michigan. There were so many people that were able to produce. Chase Winovich, I have ranked above him.
Wow.
Now, having said that, Rashawn Gary's going in the first round. Rashawn Gary might go in the top 10 because he's just an athletic specimen that is very unique what he has to offer. And so I think that he is a guy that will go early. It's going to be a gigantic mistake. I'm not a fan. So I don't want him to go anywhere outside of a 3-4. I don't want him to be the stand-up guy. I want him to have his hand on the ground as a 3-4 defensive end. Because his best trait is taking up blockers.
Absolutely.
He's not a guy that's going to get in the backfield very often. Now, I could be wrong. But the fact that we've seen people play that position and be so successful time and time again, and not with him. So take that for what you will. I'm not a Rashawn Gary guy at all. I have a second-round grade on him. I know he's going to go in the first round, but I'm just not a fan.
Yeah, I sort of feel like that'd be one guy that I may duck down a little bit. DJ, did you have anything on Gary, or can I talk about one more player before we go to our championship matchup?
Go for it.
I know you didn't talk about this guy, but we got Ja'Kai Polite. He kind of seems like the opposite of Montez Sweat in the fact that pre-combine, Polite was like a first-round lock. Now, after the disappointing combine, I have not seen a single mock where he's in the first round. Do you think that's being overblown? Do you think he's going to overcome that? Or did that combine performance really knock him down?
No, you're not going to see him go in the second round in a lot of mocks. Like the combine was awful. First off, he faked an injury. There are several different people. That's allegedly, but he wasn't really hurt. His 40 time was so bad. His interviews were even worse. If you watch any of his interviews that he had with the media, I mean, he stands up and goes, "Man, every team just bashed me completely and talked bad on me. The Rams were the only team that were nice and respected my game. Like, what are you doing?
Wrong
what are you
thing to
doing?"
say. Yeah.
And then his pro day, he ran a 5.040. You can't be a speed edge guy
Right.
and run a 540. You can't
Right.
do that. So yeah, this is a guy that just like if you have question marks, like here's the thing with it, draft analysts, quote unquote, douchebags like myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can do all the film in the world.
Yep.
But you have no access to what makes these kids tick inside their head.
Correct.
And so one of the players that I was super high on was Justin Gilbert out of Oklahoma State. He got drafted by
the
Browns whenever they got Manziel and all that stuff. You had no clue that this kid didn't give a shit about football.
Right.
You watch what he does on the field, and you say, holy freaking cow. I think I had him at like number 6 overall because he was just so clear and polished. But with somebody like Ja'Kai Polite, this is a kid that doesn't like football. And he's a speed guy that doesn't like contact. Whenever anybody touches him on the field, he bounces off. He's a pinball in the negative sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you take away speed, which he has none, what's he going to bring at this level? I will say this, his motor is great in between the play.
Yep.
But if he doesn't like the NCAA, and another thing too, he led the NCAA in forced fumbles. So whenever he gets there, he does something with it. But I would not be willing to spend more than a 3rd round pick on this kid personally, just because I don't think it's going to pan out.
Wow. DJ.
Can I comment on I'm going to comment quickly on the whole interview, him discussing the interviews. I did watch, because they did talk about his interview with the Packers. And honestly, I didn't think it was as bad as what it's put out to be, because when they asked him, like, what'd they ask you in your interview? He said they were bashing me, but he also went on to say in context, is like, that's what they're supposed to do, though. Like, that's what I expect them to do. I thought he was just brutally honest when he answered that, because he did go on to say, and it didn't sound malicious to me, so I thought some of that stuff was blown out of context with some of those questions, because people were just putting the quote out there and running with that. But when I listened to the whole thing, he said, they were bashing me, they were picking me apart, but that's exactly what they're supposed to do. He did go on to say that. So I guess I can't 100% hate on the entire interview part.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's fair. Being a Gators fan, I saw a ton of Ja'Kai Polite, and God, he'd have those games, just like what John said. The motor was there. He'd get to the quarterback. He'd make a play happen. Then there was other things, and you'd be like, he's not the second best. He's not the best pass rusher on this team. He's not the second best pass rusher on this team. There was a lot of talent on that side of the ball, and there were games he just disappeared. And if he had his motor going, he was great. And I know DJ and I talked in a previous podcast that one of my favorite guys to watch for the Gators was Fowler, Dante Fowler.
Yeah.
That guy was a monster. He had the motor, but he also had like more skill to go with it. And I know it hasn't completely transferred over to the pro game, but he's carved out a niche. He's getting contracts. He's making plays. He's seeing the field. I want to like Polite. There's just something holding me back where it's like, man, if Fowler is struggled early the way he did, I think Polite's really going to struggle early, especially with how slow he ended up proving to be from all these drills. So we won't know until he gets on the field. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on him real quick before we jump to the final round. John, is the path clear? Can we say these names out loud right now with the family back?
Oh, we are treading lightly, but this is going to be the most fun I've ever had in my life. We're doing this.
This is the real Final Four. We're not going to do any championship brackets. You are just going to pick from these 4. So, to recap, your options are from bracket 1, the big unit. From bracket 2,
so strong.
From bracket 2, I almost want you to say this one, but it's Ernie Cranks. From bracket 3, we've got the designated spitter. And from bracket 4, we've got Yogi Barely Legal. So, John, with all the pressure that's mounting up inside of you, name the baseball-themed porn star of the podcast.
Okay, so if I'm just going, straight out of here, this is the number 1 team, the Virginia, this year in the actual tournament. Yogi Barely Legal, hell yes. I'm getting a tattoo probably tomorrow.
The winner.
Nice, I love
Hands
it.
down.
On my little piece of paper here, instead of putting a star next to his name, I drew those little eggplant emojis right next to his name. So that's how we determine the
Very
winner.
appropriate.
John, I'm so glad that you were not able to only like announce the winner, but your analysis was spot on for edge rushers. It might have been even better for the porn theme name. So hats off to you. I wasn't even wearing a hat, but if I had one on, it'd be off.
I appreciate it, man. And if you answer your calling for starting this new podcast up, just let me know. I am well versed in this area.
You'll be first on the call list. John, we won't keep you any longer. I know that you probably have to help put the groceries away or try to explain your talk ever since that the family's been home. So we'll let you get going. But before we let you go, do you want to tell the people where to find your stuff one more time?
Yeah, head over to at JL_Chapman Twitter. That's the number one podcast, 49ers Rush podcast, and you can see all my Dynasty articles with DLF and Eat Sleep Fantasy. Man, lots of places, but really appreciate y'all having me. I need to go confess my sins to somebody, I'm sure, after this. So thanks again, guys.
Absolutely. John, if you can stay on 1 second, we'll close this up here. Listeners, as always, check us out on Twitter at LoadedBox. Check out the website, loadedboxpodcast.com. Thanks again to John for breaking down the edge rushers. Like I said, we've broken down the cornerbacks in our last one with Zach Hicks. Check that out. Available on iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, and Spotify. DJ, send us out.
Cheers. Bye.